Welcome back to our journey through Ottoman history. Today, we're stepping into one of the most vibrant and fascinating periods of the empire, the reign of Sultan Ahmed III. This wasn't just another era of conquests and battles. This was the Tulip era, a time when art, culture, and innovation blossomed like the very flowers that gave it its name. Ahmed III came to the throne in 1703, inheriting an empire weary from decades of war. The previous century had been tough, with costly conflicts against the Habsburgs and other European powers. The Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 had marked a significant turning point, forcing the Ottomans to cede large territories in Europe for the first time. The mood was somber, and the empire needed a change. Ahmed III, a poet and a calligrapher himself, was just the man to usher in that change. He wasn't a warrior sultan in the mold of his ancestors. His passion was for beauty, refinement, and progress, and so began the Tulip era, roughly from 1718 to 1730. Why the Tulip era? Because the tulip became the ultimate symbol of this period. It wasn't just a flower, it was an obsession. This wasn't a new love affair, of course. Tulips had been cherished in Ottoman culture for centuries, but under Ahmed III, this passion reached a fever pitch. The court, the elites, and anyone who was anyone was caught up in tulip mania. Imagine lavish gardens along the Golden Horn and the Bosphorus, illuminated by lanterns and mirrors for spectacular nighttime festivals. These weren't just simple parties. They were extravagant displays of wealth and taste. Tortoises with candles strapped to their backs would wander among the flower beds, creating a moving, magical light show. Poets would compose odes to the perfect bloom, and artists would paint its delicate petals with breathtaking detail. There were hundreds, even thousands, of named tulip varieties, each with its own unique characteristics and exorbitant price tag. Owning a rare tulip bulb was like owning a luxury sports car today, a status symbol of the highest order. This era of peace and cultural flourishing was largely orchestrated by Ahmed's Grand Vizier, Nevaherli Damat Ibrahim Pasha. He was the real architect of the Tulip era's policies. He shared the Sultan's vision for a more refined cosmopolitan empire. Together, they looked westward, not for military confrontation, but for inspiration. But now Ahmed and Ibrahim Pasha began sending ambassadors to major European capitals like Paris and Vienna. Their mission wasn't just diplomatic. It was to observe, learn, and bring back the best of European art, science, and technology. One of the most famous of these envoys was Yermisakis Memdelebi, whose detailed report on Parisian life, its palaces, gardens, and social customs captivated the Istanbul elite. This new openness led to a boom in architectural innovation. The grand, imposing style of classical Ottoman architecture began to soften. In its place, a new style emerged, often called Ottoman Baroque or Rococo. It was lighter, more decorative, and infused with European elegance. The most stunning example of this is the Fountain of Ahmed III, which still stands today outside the Topkapi Palace. It's not just a place to get water. It's a masterpiece of intricate marble work, calligraphy, and floral motifs, a public monument to the era's love of beauty. Another gem is the Sadabad Palace, a summer residence built for the court that was designed purely for enjoyment, with gardens, canals, and pavilions. But perhaps the most significant and lasting innovation of the Tulip era was the introduction of the printing press with movable Arabic type. This was a huge deal. For centuries, books in the Ottoman Empire had been painstakingly copied by hand by skilled calligraphers. While a private printing press had existed before, it wasn't allowed to print in Arabic script. In 1727, Ibrahim Mutafarika, a Hungarian convert to Islam, along with Said Effendi, the son of the Paris ambassador, received a royal edict from Ahmed III to establish the first official Ottoman press. This was a revolutionary moment. Mutafarika argued that printing would help spread knowledge, preserve important works, and make books more accessible and affordable. It wasn't without opposition, particularly from the scribes and calligraphers whose livelihoods were threatened. To appease religious authorities, the first books printed were non-religious texts, dictionaries, history books, and scientific manuals. It was a slow start, but it planted the seed for the mass dissemination of knowledge that would transform the empire in the centuries to come. Life for the elite in Istanbul became a whirlwind of poetry, readings, garden parties, and artistic pursuits. Fashion changed with more luxurious fabrics and elegant styles. Palaces and mansions, known as yalis, were built along the Bosphorus, designed to capture the beauty of the water and the sky. It was a golden age for the arts. The famous painter Levny captured the era in his miniatures, depicting the Sultan, courtly life, and the famous tulip festivals with incredible vibrancy and detail. But while the elite were living in this glittering tulip-scented bubble, not everyone was happy. This lavish spending and open embrace of Western styles created deep resentment among the general population and conservative elements of society. The common people saw the court's extravagance as wasteful and decadent, especially when they were facing economic hardships and high taxes. The janissaries, the elite infantry corps of the army, were idle and restless during this long period of peace. They saw the court's focus on parties instead of warfare as a betrayal of Ottoman tradition. The resentment simmered for years, and in 1730 it finally boiled over. A former janissary named Patrona Halil ignited a revolt. It started small, with a group of disgruntled artisans and soldiers in the markets of Istanbul, but it quickly gained momentum. They rallied against the high taxes, the perceived corruption of the Grand Vizier, and the infidel Western influences that were supposedly corrupting the empire. Their message resonated with the discontented masses. The rebellion spread like wildfire. The rebels marched on the Topkapi Palace, demanding the heads of the Sultan's top officials, including the Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha. Ahmed III, hoping to save his throne, made a terrible choice. He sacrificed his loyal friend and Grand Vizier, handing him over to the rebels. But it wasn't enough. The mob's anger was insatiable. They didn't just want a change in policy. They wanted a change in power. The Patrona Halil revolt brought a brutal and abrupt end to the Tulip era. The beautiful gardens and pavilions of Sadabad were ransacked and destroyed. The symbols of the era's luxury were torn down. The rebels forced Sultan Ahmed III to abdicate in favor of his nephew, Mahmud I. Ahmed spent the rest of his life in confinement within the palace, the same gilded cage he had once presided over. So what is the legacy of the Tulip era? It was a short-lived but brilliant flash of light in Ottoman history. On one hand, it was a period of cultural renaissance that produced breathtaking art and architecture and, most importantly, opened the door to Western ideas and technology through the printing press. It was the first significant attempt at modernization, a process that would define the empire's final centuries. On the other hand, the era's downfall serves as a cautionary tale. The vast gulf between the lifestyle of the ruling class and the struggles of the common people created a powder keg of social tension. The very things that made the era beautiful, its extravagance and embrace of foreign culture, were also the things that made it vulnerable. The Tulip era shows us a different side of the Ottoman Empire, one not defined by the sword but by the flower. It was a time of poets, not just generals, of artists, not just administrators. It was a bold experiment in cultural synthesis that, although it ended in violence, left an indelible mark on the soul of Istanbul and the course of Ottoman history. The tulips may have withered, but the seeds of change they represented would continue to grow long after. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into the Tulip era, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. See you next time.